We're on. All right, I'm going to call this meeting of the Nottingham Board of Selectmen to order for Monday, June 17th, 2019. And to start, I'd like you all to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, first item on the agenda is manifests. I'll take a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the accounts payable manifest of June 17, 2019, payroll manifest of June 18, 2019.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All in favor? So moved. Next item, minutes. We have minutes from June 3rd. Have you all had a chance to look them over yet?
I did not.
Yeah, I make a
you
motion
did?
to accept the minutes.
Well, I was just wondering if we wanted to wait till Donna was here in case she had any, were there any corrections?
No.
That you knew of?
No, a couple comments with no comment, but no corrections.
You wanna wait till?
All right, so,
I'll make the motion unless you wanna wait.
no.
I'm good either way.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from June 3rd, 2019, as written.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor? So moved. No.
I don't think so.
All right, action items from last meeting. So, one thing that we discussed last time was whether or not we want to actually create a formal policy on tax liens and tax deeding, so on and so forth. So, I think we need to get discuss the general sense of where, if and what we want to do on that, and how we want to go about doing it. Or do we just keep on keeping on with what we've been doing? There's no formal requirement that we have a policy, right? Okay.
Was there somebody that actually looks to see when we're at a certain number? I mean, what's the draw for you, Chris, or somebody to say? Is it if somebody brings it up to you, or is it something that we're actually, is Gene basically saying, hey, look, Chris, we've got these 4 houses here and they're at this level here. Is that something we should be just asking him what he?
No, the way the law and the process work are, any property with taxes owed, lacking any action from you to stop it, will get deeded, period. You owe $5, and you've been through the 2 years plus a day, or 3 years, whichever one it is. Whenever the law says this is the deadline, it's 3 years total. The tax collector has to deed it unless you step in and say, we waive that deeding of it. So the default, if you do nothing, is that anything with taxes owed will be tax deeded by the town. And what the tax collector gives us a list of all of those, gives you a list of all of those in the months leading up to that drop dead date that he sets, and says, I'm going to do this on X date, and that gives you time to look at the list and say, wait a minute, we don't want to tax lien A, B, C, D, and F, or whatever.
Do we have a list like that coming since the?
Yes, you.
July or?
Yeah, they're kind of different calendars. This will happen in probably September would be his drop dead date. We already have a draft of that list, and we can give it to you at any point. each year, we have gone through a process where I give you that list and I give you some notes on the ones that jump out to me and say, these are the ones I think are gonna get your attention, and this is the situation with those. Anything that would say to you, maybe you don't want this for some reason, there's a potential liability with the property, or there's some other reason that the town doesn't want to take it. You know, it's an owner occupant that, you know, owes $30, we're not gonna probably take that. So that process happens routinely each year, once a year. You haven't lived through it yet, but that happens every year. It will happen again in probably August.
So are we basically looking for a number where we can tell Gene that this is where we really want to start to focus on if somebody's at a certain amount? Is that what we're trying to get
No,
to?
really, you have to tell me what you want to focus on, and I'll set you up to make the decision to say deed or don't deed. The tax collector doesn't have any say in the matter. He didn't have any judgment calls to make. The law does not allow him to do anything other than, if they owe money that's 3 years old, you have to deed it.
So if the board doesn't say anything, he's obligated to proceed with deeding, tax deeding.
Yep.
On a 3-year
Yeah, at the end of the third year.
of non-payment?
Yeah. No, of any balance due.
Oh, of any?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so they could have paid a little here, a little there, but if it's still
If it's still, if it's 10 cents, the law says he has to process the deed and take it. And that's where historically I have stepped in and said, hey, this is only 10 cents, take this vote and waive it. And you vote and say, tax collector, we waive that tax deed, don't take the property. And that happens as a matter of routine with the majority of those properties. It was what you've done historically. Most of them are those owner occupieds with modest amounts due, sometimes with some payment history or some other background information that I give you. And you have decided, typically, for the owner occupied stuff, let's waive that and let it continue to grow, essentially. And what got us to this point, as you said last year, we ought to have a process to this. It felt kind of haphazard. And usually what you're really discussing is 1 or 2 or 3 properties that are kind of in play, given the parameters that you've used in the past. Either big dollars, seasonal homes that nobody's living in, vacant lots, the kinds of things that there's no human consequence to the tax deeding. And that's, you said last year, we ought to have a policy about this instead of doing it case by case.
So August, you say it would be the timeframe we'll be seeing that list?
Yeah, I think he intends to do that in September. It used to be with the prior tax collector in the first year of Gene's tenure, it was a January, February thing, but most towns do it in the fall, and that's when he's moved it to that timeframe.
I still feel like we talked about last year, a policy of some sort. What that entails, I'm not sure as of yet. I'm not sure how anybody else feels about it. But, you know, Donna's not here. I would love to have her input on that as well.
I did a little bit of looking for formal policies in other towns. I didn't find much. I think I told you last time, there's quite a spectrum of, some towns just do it automatically and they don't waive any, and others, you know.
I'm not in favor of automatic.
I haven't run into many people that are. It's,
My concern is I've already voiced this on numerous occasions, you know, poor granny and not having a place to go and all that, so, or children for that matter. I'm sure the rest of the board feels the same.
yeah, and you could, if you wanted a policy to just say, these are the things we consider without being too rigid about it, you can have it both ways. You could say, you know, the properties without some payment effort,
Yeah.
properties with a debt that exceeds some percentage of the value of the property, and vacant land are most likely to be deeded, and then tell yourself you're going to continue to do it on a case-by-case basis. You could have a policy say that. But
What would be the pushback on that, a liability or anything? Is there anything that we would need to discuss with?
no, I think if you worded it so that you had some flexibility and you could avoid the charge of being, you know, you don't want to be favoritist in this in some way or other. But they are all, they're subjective decisions. They're human decisions, and these are not straightforward financial things the way most people look at them. Some people look at them as very straightforward. You owe money, that's the way the law works, and you got to pay your taxes. Historically, you haven't been quite that rigid about it.
Do you have a rough idea of what's outstanding right now?
I could get it for you relatively quickly, but I wouldn't give it to you off the top of my head. It's trending, it's fine, relative to where historically, we don't have anything really horrific. Our biggest one on the list last year came current this year. I
remember that one.
One of our next biggest ones was in today, talking to me about that situation, so there's nothing, and we have one enforcement question for 3 parcels over on 202 that you've talked about in the past. That one's still gonna require some discussion on your part this year.
Okay.
I mean, can they?
But there are no big, there's no big USA Spring scale problem sitting out there. There are some that are growing, but in terms of our total tax receipts, it's not material.
It's not pressuring the tax rate.
No. No, it never will pressure the tax rate because the tax bills are built assuming that everything gets paid. So it's more of a balance sheet process than it is a cash process, and it never affects our operations at the scale we're at, never.
Can we have a policy that basically states it be case by case?
Sure.
I mean, I don't know, I know that probably some people are having a hard time paying, but I also know others play the system too, they know the system, so, but, I don't know.
Yeah, one thing working in your favor, even though the interest rates have been reduced by law, it's still not you're not getting away with anything, paying 8-12% on these, it builds quickly.
We're at now?
Yeah, I think it's 8 and 12.
It's not at 18 anymore, or whatever it was?
No, the legislature pulled it back a year ago, so newer stuff is gonna start clocking at a lower rate.
But the old stuff is still under the old rate?
Yeah. It's not an effective way to game the system, because we're first in line. If the property ever sells or changes hands, we have to get paid, plus interest, so.
Does that, I mean, I don't know if you know this, but does that work under the fact, let's say, we talked about the widow or the whatever that's living there, and, they pass away, and that property gets deeded to their kids. Before their kids take it, do their taxes have to be paid out, or is it town?
I'm not sure, in that case, I'm not sure, where there's not a transaction.
Sell the house and we automatically get paid.
Right,
anyway,
yeah.
so-
No, I think probate might catch that. I don't know.
If you don't know, that's fine, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
Asking
I can find out,
if
but,
you didn't know the answer.
Yeah. That's the kind of thing where, in most of these, that's the kind of thing I could figure out and tell you as you're making a decision. So if, you can envision a scenario where somebody was surprised to inherit a place and inherit a tax bill with it and wasn't able to all of a sudden pay a tax bill. Or you could also envision a scenario where somebody could be trying to game the system by, just holding on to it until they died. So I don't know, but I'll find out and let you know.
Just generally.
Yeah.
Well, how do we want to proceed? Do we want to get this as an actual agenda item, maybe next meeting after, try to put some structure to it, see what we can come up with?
But I think we're, again, from my experience, I haven't sat on the board through one of these, but, we are going to, I hope, as a board, look at every situation as a case by case, as what we've been doing for all the years before. Again, if it's a person's residence and stuff like that, I don't think we should have anything in writing about that by any means.
Right.
That says we wouldn't, because it's your only resident, not take it.
There's,
I guess keeping it somewhat vague might work to our benefit, instead of having it too structured.
right. When I say structure, I mean add some more detail, put some meat on the bones. But you're right, there's no value added in a policy that is so rigid it ties our hands and doesn't allow us to do a judgment on a case-by-case basis, because, you know, like Chris said, you know, there are situations where a property might have contamination that puts the town, you know, subject to liability that would cost more than the value of the property to begin with, you know, or you know, cleaning up after a hoarder that might cost more money than what they owe.
Yeah, like the
Who
guy in
knows?
Salem, who had all those boxes behind his house that was trashed up. You know, look what they're going through. Like, I mean, that's a situation which we hope that doesn't happen here in Nottingham, but that is a viable things where, you know,
Yeah.
the town doesn't want to take that property. You know, and neither, I mean, so, I mean, I don't know if that should be something that's, I mean, can we legally put wording in towards?
The law specifically has a clause in it that says that's a perfectly good reason for you to waive it. You don't need a policy to say that. The law says,
The law, right?
if there's a potential liability for the town in taking it, you don't need to, yeah, I mean, you still have to say don't take it, but you don't need a reason beyond that.
Right.
Yeah, the law won't make you take a Superfund site that owes its taxes, that, you know.
Can you send us like links to those RSAs just so we can see the what, the where and the why? Because it may be, if the RSAs are clear enough and the timeline that's there is clear enough, you know, maybe we don't need a policy. You know what I mean? I'm just playing devil's advocate here,
No,
but
yeah.
the flip side of the coin is what's the value added for us in creating a
Absolutely.
policy? You know, I mean, in general, it always sounds beneficial to have a policy for something, but what's it gonna do for us? So we need to weigh that question
You
as
may,
well.
what you may be really looking for is a written out process for how you're gonna do it.
Right,
That,
right.
you know, one of the things that came up last year was, can we get somebody in there to get eyes on it,
Yeah,
you know, before you take it? That's not something you have written in policy. We would do it in practice, but you don't have a policy that says, you know,
right, right.
you will do that.
Right, the outside of the house looks okay, but when you go inside, it's a bomb show, you know, it's.
Right.
So do we,
See, I don't think, I think an action item like that listed, if we do have a policy or something, that'd be good, because that benefits the town and us in a sort of protection kind of way, so that we
Yeah.
can actually have a visible, you know, somewhat a visual inspection before we make a commitment. Oh, no, we're not just looking at paper,
right, right.
you know?
So-
I mean, it's not like we're gonna be picky, but I mean, if we have the right to be picky, then let's, you know, I guess, let's maybe be picky,
Yeah,
you know, because obviously hurting the town is not what we want in any intent to do.
right, right. So do we wanna put it on the agenda for one of the next couple of meetings? I don't know what they look like. Just so that we can have Donna be part of that discussion. She's got a pretty good insight into process, so I'd like to hear what she'd have to say. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Yeah?
Yeah, reading those RSAs, whatever we get, will at least give us.
Yeah, that'll be our homework. That'll be our homework before then.
We'll have a better, maybe scope of what we want to
Right,
put.
right.
If we're gonna put anything down as a list or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
July 15th? Everybody be here July 15th?
It's a meeting after next?
Yeah, not next
meetings
meeting.
out.
Next meeting is 4th of July week. I don't know if anybody's gonna evaporate that.
Could we cancel it now due to lack of interest? Just saying.
That's a great idea.
I'd be in support of that.
Yeah. Won't
All
even
right.
say nothing.
So July 15th?
Okay.
Write that down. All right. Next up, reports from assigned boards and committees. Anything from budget?
Not in season.
Still not in season. It's like turkey season, you know? It's never in season. Planning board, it was canceled, you said? zoning, or assessing. I always get those mixed up.
No, we've had a,
You haven't,
2 more weeks.
2 weeks out?
our last
Okay.
meeting was nothing major to discuss.
Okay. And
300.
Marston, 300?
300 is on Thursday night here.
Here, okay. Okay, did I miss any? Maybe we should list them out on the,
Would that help?
on the agenda. It would really help me. I don't know why I can't get those straight. It would be, it would be helpful.
We're in grant chasing mode for Marston right now. Got a couple things going in right this week.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. All right, town administrator report.
Just a few things. We said goodbye to Ross Oberlin today. Sergeant Oberlin retired. Sent him on his way with a couple slices of pizza and a plaque. Low key, but it's about
Get
all we can-
pictures?
Somebody did, yes. Yep. Yeah, he's off into the sunset. Summer camp is coming up. They've got 100 and something kids in the first week. Big numbers. Big
High
numbers this
attendance.
week, yep. I think they're ready, but it's always kind of a scramble this time of year. The field work on our audit of last year's books is finished. No major issues. They have some recommendations for you, which I just got, and I'll send to you probably tomorrow on a couple of procedural things that they always come up with something. And other than that, no major issues. I think we'll have a full report. I bet it won't be our next meeting, but the one after that, we might have it finished. Nothing that rises to the level of a management letter comment or anything, just findings of recommendations of better processes we can use. But that process went pretty smoothly. This is our second year with that firm. They were only in the office for, I think, 2 days, so a lot faster now that they know us, we know them, things went pretty well. And lastly, I sent you something late today. We got a completed application for a restoration of a merged lot. Did you get a chance to look at that?
Yeah.
You haven't done one of those in a while?
So the one, lot 70 on Tuckaway Shores, or?
Yes, yeah, 70, 30, and 31. Are you comfortable dealing with that tonight? I know you just got it.
Well, as long as it's within the scope of our authority and responsibilities, I'm fine with it.
Yep, you want a little background on how that whole thing works?
The only question I had about it was, apart from this form or this affidavit or whatever it is there do we have copies of these deeds that you say exist?
Yes.
Because if those were erroneously merged, that means it said to me that maybe town records were incomplete. So there's some information that we need to absorb. Right?
You know, it's a better way to think of these is they weren't necessarily merged in error. This happened all across the state and several places here in town. It was very common for people to have multiple lots from subdivisions, particularly around the lakes where the lots were tiny and people they'd buy 2 or 3 or 4 parcels from a subdivision.
So, we've had this, my family's 2 lots on Tuckaway Lake were side by side. There were 2 lots, one was bought in the 30s, one was bought in the 50s. But they were all owned by my grandfather, Charles Sirocco, but there were 2 lots. But when they did this merger, they put them all as 1 lot. So this was one of the situations that probably happened here, was in this original time, it was a single owner that owned 2 lots, but when he purchased them, he purchased 2 lots. Because that's how the original plan was set up for the road, so they were merged involuntarily by the state or town.
By the town, yeah.
By the town.
Yeah, in this case, it often happened with vacant, there'd be a house lot with a camp on it and a vacant lot next to it.
Yeah.
That kind of thing was very common. It was also common for towns to, just for simplicity's sake, lump them together, tax them as one parcel. and nobody cared, but it did have an impact on people that wanted to then later do separate things with those separate lots. So the legislature passed a law, I don't know, maybe it's 5 years ago now, that created this window of opportunity for people whose lots had been merged by towns to have them unmerged. And in this case, this is it's got all the telltale signs of one of those where the deeds are there, the original approved subdivision is there, the lot numbers all match up with the original subdivision. You can see it was two separate parcels when it was approved and when it was purchased. And then sometime in the late 70s or 80s, one of the taxable parcels evaporates and gets sucked into another one, and it gets merged by the town just for simplicity's sake. Not maliciously or erroneously, it was just common practice to do that.
Christopher, what was the address of this?
You want me to answer him?
The what?
You want me to answer him? He's supposed to talk to you, so.
What was the address of this?
This is at Tuckaway Shores, map 70, lot 30 and 31.
Map 70, lot 30,
and 31.
and map 70, lot 31.
Yeah, I don't know how well you can trust the street numbers over there at Tuckaway Shores. I'll give you that, but I don't know what it is. So what we do, when these come in, we had a rush of these when that law was passed. We had a number of them. This one came to us probably 3 weeks ago. We first started seeing it. We've checked into the records. We looked at the deeds. We looked at the plan. It looks like one of those classic cases of the town throwing them together. It was clearly two different parcels that were approved in the original subdivision.
So what does the process look like for us? Is it just a motion? and
Yep.
That's it?
Yep, nothing more to it. We can, if you have questions about it, or you want to see the documents, or you want to see the process that we use to get to it, we can certainly show you all that. This one's kind of boring. And we run it by Avatar. Our assessing people look at it, our planning people look at it, make sure everything looks like the story that we're told in it.
So he's essentially wants to unmerge them.
Yep. And what that will mean is, for us, is just recreating that old tax parcel that used to be there, putting it back on the map, and recording it at the registry.
Do you have some?
There's nothing even to sign, we just have to approve it, just by
Yeah,
way of
so
a motion.
motion language.
Is everybody comfortable with just,
I've been,
well, you're familiar with it, but
more than, yeah, this has already been done for many lots on the lake already. And I think it's even been done over on the North River Lake too, the large merges over there. So it's something that we've seen to be unmerged.
Yeah, it's just a formality then to approve it, so.
Yeah, if there were any red flags, and we had one, I think, 2 years ago that there was some question about, there was some hesitance about, and we took our time with it. If we found anything like that, I'd certainly tell you, but this one looks pretty
do you need a motion?
I'll take a motion.
Okay, I'd like to make a motion that the select board approves the restoration of involuntarily merged lots, map 70, lots 30 and 31.
I'll second that.
I have a motion and a second, all in favor?
All right.
So moved.
Okay, thank you.
We don't need to sign anything, do we, Chris?
Nope. Just send that back so we can get it to the registry. You. That is all I had for you.
All right. Since it's almost, what?
Chris,
Yep.
you had sent out an email in regards to the excavator?
Yeah, we're gonna talk about that?
You want to do it now? It's on the agenda later, but we can do it now if you want.
Well, you talk to sale of properties, whatever you guys want to do.
We could, if it's on the agenda.
Well, what I'm thinking is it's 7 o'clock and Jen Jish, is that how you say it? Sis, okay, sorry. I tried. She's gonna jump ahead and let her give her presentation, and then we can finish up with our agenda items after, so we don't bore her to death with. Okay, come on up.
I'll give you.
Thank you.
And my business card.
Oh, yes.
It was easy, your name.
I know, I know.
Stratford Regional. Oh, that's right.
So go ahead and introduce yourself for everybody, the mobs of people watching at home.
Right, exactly. So good evening, my name is Jen Sizz. I am the director of the Stratford Regional Planning Commission. I've been there as director for about a year now. I started just after Memorial Day last year. Been working on making the rounds and trying to visit all of the 18 communities within the SRPC region. I'd like to make this something that's just a regular annual occurrence where I just stop in, visit, give you a little update on where we're at and what we're working on, and have an opportunity to touch base with you. I know Nottingham is not one of our dues-paying communities, but you are still part of our region and you're still important to us, and we want to make sure that we're maintaining open lines of communication with the town. Just as a general kind of what is SRPC and what is a regional planning commission, regional planning commissions are established under state statute. There are 9 of us in the state of New Hampshire. Under statute, we have a handful of obligations to our communities. One is to prepare a comprehensive regional plan. Another is a housing needs assessment, and then to provide local technical assistance to our communities. We have a teeny tiny little grant from the Office of Strategic Initiatives to cover some of that, and then otherwise we're out there trying to figure out and how to piece those dollars together to provide those services. We also are a designated economic development district. That is a designation under federal designation under the Economic Development Administration. I will note, though, that Nottingham is part of REDC, which is a separate economic development district. We are also a metropolitan planning organization. That is the Federal Transportation Planning designation. There are 4 MPOs in the state of New Hampshire. Those are the larger urbanized areas or regions with some urbanized area within them. As an MPO, whether you are a dues-paying member or not, you are still at the table, you still have a vote at that table. That is kind of that direct mandate down from US DOT and federal highways. As I mentioned, we have 18 communities in our region, so we are all of Stratford County, plus there are 2 communities from Carroll County and 3 from Rockingham County. So it gets a little confusing. Sometimes folks call us the Stratford County Regional Planning Commission, which we are not Stratford County. So we do have 2 commissioners that have been appointed from Nottingham, I think one of which just expired at the end of May. So you'll probably be seeing a follow-up communication from Shayna to say, or you may already have, to say, hey, send us another appointment or renew an appointment. So our commissioners meet quarterly. Our next commission meeting is on the 27th. It is our annual meeting, and it's at 11 o'clock. We have a luncheon, and we'll have a presentation, a panel that will talk about the intersection of housing, transportation, and conservation planning, and how they kind of all work hand in hand. Our policy committee, which is the entity that governs our transportation programs, or the MPO, that meets monthly on the 3rd Friday of the month, and that is the meeting where I'd say you definitely want to have one of your commissioners attend if you can, because that is where we vote on all things transportation, and you do still have a vote at that table. Our technical advisory committee is another transportation body that advises our policy committee that also meets monthly. Typically the representatives from each community are a staff member, someone who is kind of involved in the day-to-day of transportation, and sometimes it's the road agent, or sometimes it's a municipal planner, sometimes it's a town administrator, just whoever is there on a day-to-day basis dealing with the roads and road network. That body meets the first Friday of the month. It's just a little kind of update of some of the things that we've actually still been fairly actively working with the town of Nottingham. And so kind of how we do that is, Generally, if we have a grant source that we can bring to the table, we will provide services at no charge to communities. That's something, though, that we hold for dues-paying communities first with those discretionary programs. And then otherwise, then if we don't have an alternative source that we can bring to the table to offset your costs, then it'll be a local contract. As a local contract, we've done a lot of mapping work, particularly with your Conservation Commission, and have done some maps for your master plan, some technical assistance on the Aquifer Protection Overlay District, and I believe we work directly with the Conservation Commission on that. We've done some trails mapping, and then also this past fall did some work again with the Conservation Commission on their effort to protect lower order streams. I will mention one of our discretionary programs where we have grant dollars is our Brownfields program. We had a grant that is just wrapping up, but we just found out that we have been awarded another 3 years of Brownfields funding. So you were talking about not wanting to take property that might have some liability associated with it. The Brownfields program, if you have the owner's permission to access the land, depending on how the liability is with that land, we then would have dollars to go in and do those phase 1 and phase 2 environmental assessments so that you could know what that liability truly is associated with that land. So that's one of the things just to kind of keep out there as a resource that we do have, and that's something that's at no cost to the community to do those environmental assessments. Under our transportation programs, we have a few things that are active and going on right now. We are working on updating our Metropolitan Transportation Plan. That is the long-range transportation plan, where we look at the next 20 to 30 years of needs within the region. It's trying to build a queue for projects that ultimately we want to have ready for the 10-year plan solicitation rounds. So trying to get ahead of that and have those projects ready to roll when they announce a 10-year plan process. As part of that, we do have a survey that is out there right now. You may have seen that. And we've been asking communities to share that as wide as possible. We had the little town of Rollinsford posted it in their weekly newsletter, and we instantly had like 40 responses from the town of Rollinsford. So right now they've got more representation than Somersworth in that survey. So, you know, you can kind of play some little friendly rivalries amongst our communities, but you know, if you can share that, then there's more voices from your community that are represented in that plan. So it's definitely something that's important that we want to hear from your residents as to what is important within the transportation universe. Speaking of the 10-year plan that I mentioned, we are entering a new round. The first GASSET meeting, GASSET is essentially it is Department of Transportation and the Executive Council, that they're the ones that write the first draft of the state's 10-year transportation plan. Their first meeting is on Wednesday of this week, Wednesday afternoon. So that process is off and running for the next round. I know the last round there was the Route 4 and 152 intersection that went in there. It was, I think, the only project from the SRPC region that went in that round because it was large enough that it encompassed our full 2-year funding appropriation within that plan. So that project is still in there. I think everything is programmed for 2028. And looked at it, it was the engineering, right-of-way, and construction are all programmed for 2028. I would anticipate at some point that will shuffle because it's usually a phased process and not typically all in 1 year. So kind of keep an eye on that. And we have reiterated to DOT that all projects that are currently in the 10-year plan remain priorities for the region, so that shouldn't be impacted. On the transportation side, one of the kind of the discretionary programs that we offer and something that we did for the town is a road surface management systems inventory. It's asset management for your local roads, and something that we recently completed. That's something that for dues paying communities we're able to do under our discretionary programs under our state the transportation programs that we, funds that we receive from the state. But it's something where when we don't have the dues to kind of leverage the match, we have to put those discretionary dollars to the dues paying communities. But it's something that we did for the town. I know we just recently completed it, and you've got a new road agent, and so Steph's already been in contact with you about some potential updates to that as well. So we'll be following up a lot with that. So that's kind of all I had in a nutshell. I just want to, stop in, introduce myself, and touch base, and also ask if you have any questions for me, or is there anything that is on your minds that you would like to see coming from the Regional Planning Commission?
How does the economic development piece work? I understand that we're in a different district.
Yeah. So number one challenge is getting our funding from EDA. So we're a newer economic development district. So we should have funding for July 1st. I was just on the phone with our EDA rep. So generally we'll work with all the communities in the region inclusively. However, when it comes down to the comprehensive economic development strategy, that is that plan document where you would see projects listed. You would want to have your projects listed in REDC SEDS. So they're the Regional Economic Development District. They're headquartered in Raymond. And so you would want to have your projects listed in their SEDS. I know also on Wednesday, it's a very busy Wednesday, they are having their final planning meeting for this annual update to announce what they've got listed. Bottom line is, like, getting a project listed in the SEDS, it just opens the door for future funding. EDA will require it to be in the SEDS. There are other funding sources, such as like from the Community Development Finance Authority, that they will look favorably towards a grant application if you do have your project listed in a plan such as a SEDS. So kind of take the SEDS aside. When it comes to the local technical assistance side of things, we'll still work with any of the communities within our region. We do a monthly brown bag lunch at our office for the economic development staff within the region to get together and kind of share different ideas of things that they're working on, and go from there. So, is there something you had in mind in specific, or?
Yeah, I mean, we don't really have any projects to list, but that's part of the challenge for us. We've just, the town has recently voted to restrict Route 4.
Okay.
No more residential developments, and we want to take this commercial district and develop it, which is kind of hard because we don't have town water, town sewer,
Right.
any of the services that a business might traditionally be interested in. So how do we develop that land? How do we make it palatable to business? We need business in this town.
Yeah, so I mean, there's without kind of jumping ahead, there are different kind of incentives that you can put into place to attract development. I don't know off the top of my head bill number. So there was a bill passed a couple years ago that took up what was done as a pilot project in Coos County, that it was a tax incentive for commercial industrial development, but the way the statute was applied, it was that you had to apply it townwide. You couldn't strategically kind of say, we're going to offer this incentive in this particular zone. So it gave you very little control over how to apply that and to kind of create more attractive locations for commercial industrial development. There is an amendment that was going through the legislature this current year that the Economic Development Director in Exeter was working on to amend that so that you could strategically apply that within your community. So that would be something I would say keep an eye on.
79E?
No, it wasn't 79E. I wish I could remember off the top of my head, but I could certainly follow up and send it to you.
79E is the downtown one?
Correct. Yep.
That doesn't help us either, sorry.
No, but this other one, I think, would get to that. The challenge was just the being able to apply it to a strategic location versus having to offer it townwide. So, which doesn't really necessarily do things for you. You're trying to achieve specific development goals.
Yeah.
So.
Is economic development as a government process working in your area anywhere? I mean, is it?
As a government process, or?
I mean, you see local governments with economic development efforts
Yeah.
Yeah, where are the
We can
success
turn off the
stories?
microphone.
Where are the, where are the success stories? I think you see different things in different places. I mean, Dover is just absolutely booming, and they definitely market themselves as open to development. I think Rochester's had some great successes. They've been struggling with their downtown, and so trying to figure out how to turn around a few properties. It's every community is a little bit different. Like Rochester, some of the issues with their properties is the condition of the properties in the downtown. And so there are things that we are looking at with the Brownfields program to figure out, what are the issues with the property? Why aren't investors looking at those vacant properties? Because there's clearly something going on there. So that's something that we wrote into our Brownfields grant to kind of help them along and figure out what some of those challenges or impediments might be. Some of the smaller communities are definitely, trying to get creative. I know Farmington is really focusing on Trails Network and expansion of their trails and how they can leverage that to try and market themselves as a destination for like ATVs or snowmobiles. So it's each community is kind of taking a creative approach to what they have for local assets and how they can promote themselves. Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions?
Lot to think about.
Yeah.
Well, we're here. Chris knows how to get a hold of us. Happy to hear from you at any point.
Okay. Thank you for coming.
Thanks for coming
Thank
in.
you. All right. Have a good evening.
I owe you a call. You in the office tomorrow?
I am.
I'll call you tomorrow.
Okay, sounds good.
I think I told you, Jen and I have been talking about them potentially providing a town planner.
Yeah, which I should
role
have
for
mentioned.
us.
Yes.
We're just talking that through yet. We're still,
Yeah, I was still on
talking it
the
through.
planning board when we were
Yeah.
discussing contracting for planning
yeah,
services.
they do that
Yeah.
with a couple other towns as a circuit rider kind
Yeah.
of concept.
Yeah.
So we're Dirk and I have been talking about that and how to, do we go look for an employee? Do we talk
Yeah.
to Stratford Regional? So,
Yeah, we've even talked about just doing it on a temporary basis while you're trying to figure out, how to find, if you can find someone to fit your needs, which is the definite challenge these days. I know Farmington's struggling with the same thing, so we're providing temporary services for Farmington right now. We do regularly staff Northwoods Planning Board. But otherwise, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
thanks.
We'll talk
Excellent.
tomorrow.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right.
Just so you know, Dirk and Gary Anderson are your commissioners at Stratford Regional.
Yeah, we already re-voted them in, right?
I think we did,
On the
yeah.
planning board, yeah.
Yep.
Let's see, I thought we had that
Yep.
vote.
Yeah.
Earlier this year.
And I won't translate all the acronyms for you, but another one of those committees that I get all the information about it. I don't go because I can't justify the time because there's never anything in Nottingham on the agenda. It's just never. The one project that we have on the radar is that intersection at 4 and 152. It's still there. It's in the DOT morass somewhere.
But that's Northwood.
Yeah, technically it is, and the intersection itself is in Northwood. There had been talk of moving it, which would have put the actual intersection into Nottingham. Now they were also talking about signaling it somehow. They have some fancy new signaling thing.
What would that, if they were to move it, what would that do with Cooper Hill?
Leave it right where it is, I think. They bought a piece of property there. They own, the state DOT owns a piece of land off the road that connects with Route 4 where they had intended to move it. I think they've decided that's too expensive. So they were talking about some new signaling or something. But as you best case scenario was 2028, I think she said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just mind-numbingly bureaucratic, so we don't invest a lot of time in chasing all of it. If there was money to be had, we would, but it's,
Well, it could certainly cost us if they move it, if they move that intersection on Nottingham now, our first responders, we're gonna have to carry the response to that intersection if they move it on our side
Yeah,
of the town
I think
line.
moving it may be a dead concept.
Yeah.
It was too expensive. They still own the land, but I think they've given up on that as a solution. Anyway.
All right, on to general business. So the first item in this category is sale of town property.
All right, so last week I gave you one of these, and if you didn't bring it with you, I'll give you another one. This is a selected portion of the list of properties that the town owns that I thought you might consider selling or putting on the market. We haven't done that in a few years. I had an abutter approach me about one of them, and that prompted me to look at the whole list again. You don't have to do this. It's, none of these are really significant in the grand scheme of things. There's no strategic value in doing this, but we are probably somewhere around the peak of the market, so I figure.
They're all buildable?
On their own, not necessarily. If you want to walk right down the list, 18 Rozier is, they're all lots, they're all but it's tiny. It was big enough for a mobile home, barely. We offered that once before. One of the things we've done with some of these little shred parcels is that you've offered them for sale by way of a sealed bid and required that they be merged with an abutting property. That obviously reduces the pool of potential buyers rather dramatically, so you don't get as much, you don't get much for them. But you do, in some cases, add some value or some use to another property and get some tax value by doing that. And that's what we did with a couple of parcels on Rozier.
Would this be a prime candidate, that first one there?
Yeah, if you were going to sell it, I would suggest that you do it with the condition that it be merged. Those, in the case of Rozier in particular, those are all little 50-foot strip lots. They're, I don't think you want to encourage, somebody buying a lot for the purpose of storing something or putting a shed on it or something like that. If you can make an abutting parcel bigger and encourage a more significant development, that will be better for the neighborhood and for the town in the long run. So, same is true with the ones on Water Street. That's those two parcels, 117 and 118 on map 1, are the one that an abutter approached me about. There really is only one abutter other than the roads for those particular parcels. That by merging them with an abutting parcel, you'd make a much bigger, better, more easily developed parcel out of a bunch of empty, it's all empty, right?
Yeah, empty space, yeah.
If you look at the map, you can see that, you can see how we got to this point and how there's a collection of these scattered little fragments. 61 Freeman Hall, we offered this a couple of years ago, 3 years ago now. This is across the street from the church at the intersection of
There's
Freeman
an
Hall.
old house there.
Old house there that we took down.
Oh,
We took
yeah,
that
yeah.
house down.
It's on the corner.
Yep, very much buildable lot. The board was not inspired by the offers that they got last time around, decided to keep it.
Market was slower then.
Yep. The next ones you haven't seen before, and it's probably best to look at a map before you get too excited about it, but I don't know how the town came to own these two, but they look like a logical candidate for somebody to expand the size of a current lot as well. That's worth a look at a map.
Lots are landlocked?
Yeah, there's no frontage on any road.
No right-of-ways on the adjacent properties?
Not that we're aware of. There's the files on them are really thin. There's just not much to be had there. And the last one's on Garish, which is a really good size parcel. I think of that area as wet, but maybe somebody else can do something with it. That's on the outside of Garish, between Garish and the river, as you go around the corner there.
Okay.
And you can certainly, I mean, the list of everything we own is in the town report. There's nothing else that jumped out at me that had any potential, but you can certainly.
Right.
Well, none of these properties serve any purpose to us.
One thing we did, this might be 5 years ago now, is we took the whole list of town-owned properties and ran it by the planning board and the conservation commission and all the department heads and said, hey, is there any value in these things, you know, is there any strategic value in any of these things that we should hold on to them? And we pulled some off the list of potential sale prospects for that. We kind of know what those are. There are places where we stick snow, and there are places where we, you know, there's all kinds of cases. Anything that abuts conservation land it's kind of a de facto extension of that conservation land by leaving it in town hands. So you can make it, you know, you can buffer those and make them bigger. There's nothing, every time we've gone through this process, we've kind of pulled those things off the list, as well as anything that's in use or might conceivably be in use.
So these are essentially the remainders that are viable.
Yeah, this is my
candidates
picks.
for-
This is my picks. This is not, there's no science to this. It's just me looking at the list. A couple intentionally left off. I mean, USA Springs property, obviously.
Yeah.
There's one across the street from the USA Springs property that we've now held for more than 3 years and we could sell. And I didn't include that on the list because I thought we ought to keep it until we made a judgment on the USA Springs
one.
parcel. You know, in one of those scenarios, we were looking for abutting properties for that property, so I didn't put that on this list, but, you know, so that's where the list comes from. No urgency to this, although I would like to get an answer to the one on Water Street. We have somebody that's interested, if you're interested in hearing an offer or creating a bid process for that, we can do that, but.
I'd be open to that, would you?
Yeah. Yeah, I would,
To see what Garish and to see what that other,
It doesn't cost you anything. You throw it out there and see what you get, and you can say no if you want.
Yeah.
property in Nottingham is selling, lots are selling, things are going, so this might be the right time.
Yep.
For us
Yeah.
just to throw those properties out there to see what we can grab for them and get them off our books.
Yeah, I mean, they immediately go on the tax roll, so
Yeah.
there's no real downside if you don't plan to use it.
I'm good with that.
all right, so it sounds like we're okay with engaging with the abutter on the Water Street properties to see what Chris can do there.
Well, if we're gonna do that, we're gonna have to do it as a sealed bid thing. You know,
Yeah.
it's, we'll treat it like anything else, just knowing that there's not gonna be a lot of interest in it beyond that, but.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody have any reservations about any of these other properties? Do we want to get it?
I'd like some more intel on the Stage Road and Garish one
Okay.
before we make a final decision on that
Okay.
one. On those.
What are we looking for on Garish, like if it's wet or if it's?
Well, yeah, yeah. And how many, I mean, obviously that could be subdivided and all that, you know.
You might be able to condition a sale on no subdivision.
Yeah,
Just make that a part of the deal.
okay.
Is it an irregularly shaped lot? No?
No, it's damp. I think you probably have to do
Yeah.
some work to find a lot and a perk test and everything.
Right, right.
That's probably why it's been there as long as it has.
Yeah, 'cause it has 260 feet of road frontage on Garish.
All right. Do you need a vote from us or anything?
No,
or
I have enough to
just-
keep moving here.
Good enough, okay.
Yep.
All right, yeah, let's see what we can do there.
Yeah, and if you're okay with, I made, the ones that you don't want to pause on, I may just launch that process and, come back to you when I
Yeah.
have more on those other two.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's fine.
All right.
Tony, can I ask how many items are on that list, I don't need to see the list.
How many properties are on this list? Technically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Seven
Seven
tax
lots.
parcels. Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions on that? Those? No? All right. Next item, excavator change order.
Okay, I sent you, I think it was today, something from Sean on the excavator. Once we got it, they learned that it didn't have a feature that,
Ask what this feature is. I mean, I read the
Yes.
whole thing, but
Yep.
I'm not communicating, I don't.
I needed a layman's explanation, and I said, I need to understand this. So, the excavator has two different kinds of buckets that are interchangeable. The nozzle has different things you can stick on the end to do different work. One of them's a digging bucket, shallow, big scoop, use it for digging. One of them is a grading bucket, wider, shallower, use it for doing ditch work and stuff like that. One of them is a thumb that you grab trees or brush with, works
So
with
there's
the.
three. This is off to the back, the whole part, right? The front.
It's on the front, yeah, there's only one tool on
Yeah,
this,
yeah,
right?
I
There's
know.
one tool at a time on this machine. Did we get any other? I think those are the three. With the grading bucket, the wider, shallower one, you can do this motion, you can do this motion with it. You can imagine in working in a ditch, how you'd want to do these things. Turns out, the way it comes from the factory, you can't do this and use the thumb at the same time. So while you're doing some of the stuff that they want to do, you'd be taking a piece off, putting another piece on, taking a piece off, putting another piece on. Doesn't come built with the right hydraulics to use both of these things at the same time that you can control within the
It's a
cabin.
valve. There's a valve.
It's a valve for the hydraulics that allows you to use these things simultaneously. It's common, if not standard, in such machines to have that capability with that grading bucket. In looking at the specs, Sean read into the specs that it was built into it, and found that the way they'd written it and the way he had interpreted it, it really wasn't built that way. There's a way you can do it, you can add it on, but it's important enough, and to not have it is inefficient enough that we think it's worth going back and adding this valve on that can do it. Went back and forth with the vendor, took the machine out of service for a couple days, threatening to send it back, negotiated with the vendor about, well, look, this is what it says, and their wording is technically good enough, it's accurate, we didn't get bait and switched on it. It was just an interpretation and an understanding that we had. Came to terms with them that we thought we could live with, which is to come up with another essentially 4,000 out of, well, they wanted 9.
9.
They wanted 9. Sean got them to 4. If we had some, legal basis to fight it, we would, but we don't feel like we do. It's just how we interpreted the specs. So even with the additional amount, it's still less than the next machine that we took bids for, we got bids for. So it's still, a better value, even with this extra 4. But I think it's worth it. Because to not have it, they'll be climbing in and out of the machine all the time, plugging it, unplugging it. It would really slow them down and make it, it's not worth having it without that function. So, that's where we sit. Is that a good enough layman's explanation of the functions? It's the best I can do, I'm sorry.
Very animated, I will give you that.
Accurate?
Yes.
Okay, good.
What did he say?
I don't know how you do this in the minutes, but.
Just in parentheses, see accompanying video.
Yeah, so that's where we are. Realizing that we when we changed the setup on the Mac and said we're saving a bunch of money on the excavator, let's spend some more on the setup of the Mac. Sean went back and said, well, we can pull some of that back on the Mac if, we don't want to.
But we have money that's left over on the,
Yeah, we have money in the warrant article, it's there.
Without
We're still-
compromising the MAC?
Correct. We have, this is still well within the authorization from town meeting for the excavator and the trailer. We were, I don't know, 14, 15 under, I think.
Yeah.
So, it's, yeah, I could keep going, but I'd be saying the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, I don't feel good about shortchanging the MAC.
no. No, I have some reservations in regards to the excavator, or concerns rather. When I originally spec'd this piece of equipment out, we were looking at the John Deere, which had everything which you had described without having to add any additional valves or anything like that on it. And it was still under budget. Not as much as the Caterpillar, but it was still under budget. This is a prime example where sometimes if you start making changes, something gets overlooked. And I think this is one of them. I'm disappointed to hear that we bought a piece of equipment, now we gotta spend more money to get it to do it what we originally bought it for. Granted, it's still under the budget. I think we need to do a better job going forward when we spec out pieces of equipment, that in the language that we are getting what we are asking for and what it says in the contract. Sounds like this is just, a misunderstanding or whatever the case may be, but I had everything spec'd out on the John Deere piece of equipment, and when you start changing vendors and all that stuff, this is what can happen. And here we are. So, I'm in favor of doing what we need to do for the Caterpillar, but I think we should have stuck with the original John Deere. That's just me, only because it had everything that we needed. We didn't have to add anything more to it. Yes, it was a little more pricey, but, we didn't have to put additional money into it. That's all I'll say.
4,100 include them picking it up, or is that 4,100 include like a total cost factor, or is we still transporting it back to them?
I think we're bringing it to them.
They should come get it.
I think that's where we left it, because we have a trailer now, so it's not a huge deal for us. But I think we left it as we're bringing it to them.
Where is the Caterpillar deal?
This is the one in Concord?
Concord, yeah.
Not far.
No, we're not taking it to Detroit or something.
Road trip.
Or where's Caterpillar,
How long will
Peoria?
they have the machine for?
A day or two. It's not
So it's a simple,
they're waiting for all the pieces to come together, but it's not a big production to put it on. It'll still be warranted like it was part of the original machine, still warranted like the whole machine, so. It's not like a aftermarket thing that's getting patched on.
Okay.
Well, despite that handicap, I mean, I've seen the work they're doing with it, and it looks pretty slick.
We did start on your road, so.
Yes, and those look very good, too. Yes. Yeah, just it's just amazing how smooth you can make a mess of dirt and rocks and mud, and then make it look nice, with the right piece of equipment, yeah. So, but
you want to
yeah,
vote for us right now, let's spend the 4,100 bucks?
Yep.
do you have a,
Make a motion
what, yeah,
that we spend the $4,100 to do what's needed for the excavator.
Second.
is that formal enough? Okay, motion and a second, all in favor? Motion carries.
Thank you.
And we're getting it graphics put on, town graphics.
Yep.
Was that part of the original deal? Just kidding.
I think all our pieces of equipment should be labeled, that's just me. So. Thanks, John.
All right, that brings us to the end of our agenda. Any action items for next meeting we need to think about? I think we've already touched on all the. Chris is gonna send us some RSAs on the tax deeding process.
Yep.
That'll help.
And possibly some information from Stratford Regional. There was something she was talking about, the economic.
Book ready about taxes.
I didn't, there was one thing
No,
I
I don't think
didn't.
so. But I'm gonna do some more digging on those 2 parcels, for sale. Yep.
And just something in general, that I guess we have now a Nottingham gardening club, you know, who is, looking at doing stuff for around town, for anybody that has extra hoster plants or extra plants that would like to donate to them.
I
to
have
help
some.
clean up, that would be something that they're definitely looking for.
That's a community
Which would be-
growers. I call it community growers.
Okay, thanks.
Where would you like,
You know who I'm talking about though, right, Steve?
I've written about it in the forum,
Right.
you read about it.
So I just wanna put a little formal thing that says, you know, if anybody's looking for that, you know, they've already done a little section over here where,
We've also done the triangle.
that's what I was talking about, the
Yeah,
section over
right in
there.
front of this building.
Yep.
That looks great.
Bark mulch?
That was a wonderful lady named Beverly Stacy that dug that up and weeded it and replanted it.
Looks wonderful.
Chad Fernald gave us the mulch.
And she just happens to be my mother-in-law.
Oh, they got a plan. I
And it was a brainchild of Courtney, in a connection with Courtney, so I give them credit.
Yeah, just thought of something nice.
No, it's a great idea.
We're going after the,
Garden.
We're going after the flagpole next. We're gonna chop a bunch of that stuff down and,
Flagpole.
right out in front here.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And, we're gonna chop a bunch of that down, and we may end up actually putting some of those wood chips over there.
Yeah.
But, that's next. But the gardening folks are doing great. Looks so much better.
Does. All right, anything else before we go to non-public?
I had a member of the community asked me about, conditions on South Cemetery, just for a future thing. About road conditions, about the fencing up there and stuff like that, just for something to, if you get a chance to take a little ride through to see that. That's one of our oldest cemeteries with graves going back from, and since we're gonna be celebrating. our
You're up here.
South Cemetery.
Yeah. Yeah,
That's
we,
over there.
No, that's north and new
No,
north.
This is
South is down.
156, 156.
156 is south.
Yes.
That's what I'm talking about, right?
Okay,
That's
all right,
south.
good. So just want to make sure we're all on the same page, yeah.
If not, it's a grave
Right,
error.
South Cemetery,
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
Just the condition of the roads there and stuff like this, I mean, we're coming to our 300th anniversary. You know, there are graves in there that are 200-something years old, they are part of Nottingham. I don't know if we address it this year, but it's something to think that the old iron gates are really rough and falling down, the road is, I took in my car, very, very rough for passability, you know, a lot of old
Yeah.
family roads. It's something, again, just to bring up.
What road is it on?
156.
Was actually on 156?
Yeah, if you, as you go to,
Okay.
it's on the left as you go.
Didn't we look at fencing up there?
We did fencing at the other, with the other ones.
But we didn't look
We
at,
haven't done this one yet. And actually, Sean and I were just over there with Chad at South Cemetery looking at a Band-Aid.
Chad does all the mowing and stuff for the things like this and stuff, and just something to be,
We're gonna,
it's in a, could be a little bit better shape.
yeah, Sean's gonna gin up some cost numbers for us to take a look at, really more of a Band-Aid than a really fixing the roads,
Yeah,
but
absolutely, you know,
we just walked it
because
last week.
some of the grave sites are basically almost on the road or.
There's one that's being driven over.
Right.
And, yeah,
So-
we gotta move the road back to where it was intended to be, and
So, this is just concerns that somebody brought up that, you know, I took a little ride through it today and I just thought something we should maybe just think about for their.
Yeah, do we still have a cemetery trustee?
yeah, we have 3 of them, yeah, and we're gonna, once I get those numbers, I'll loop them in and we'll have a conversation about, you know, what do we wanna do short and long term.
Yeah.
The fencing has been the long-term play, but they've got a long wish list, and
Yeah.
we've tried to take a bite each year. The last few years, we've spent, 10 grand or so trying to catch up on cemeteries, but, and there's been a lot of private work done too, a lot of people have put
Yeah.
efforts in. But we're still chasing it.
All right, anything else? All right, well, that concludes the public part of the meeting. We're gonna go into non-public now. And when we close the non-public session, we will be closing the public meeting as well.
Okay. May I tell you a story about a person in Vietnam, a war story, and he got a letter from his tractor. It was a John Deere letter.
All right, Steve. Going on.
Where do you come up with this?
Dad jokes. Everyone. All right, I will take a motion to enter non-public under D.
John Moore, yes?
No, I need a motion.
I think motion that we go to non-public. Sorry, I thought you were asking for the roll call.
Nope.
Sorry. That was one step ahead. I made the motion.
No, you have to say it. You actually have to read it out.
Good night, Mrs. Calabash, wherever you are.
Thank you, Steve.
Make a motion for non-public per RSA 91-A, -3, section D. Yeah.
Second?
All right, roll call vote.
John Moore, yes.
Tyler Eden.
Ben Bartlett.
Tony Dumas, yes. Night, everybody.